I want to talk about a game that caught me off guard the moment that I started it. The visuals do look different from what most people are probably used to today, but the style still works. It has this, it's got this feel, that this late 90s, early 2000s vibe going on, and the whole resurrection angle that the game has adds to that older atmosphere. And at the same time, the story pulls you into a world that feels very personal and very uncomfortable, and it does so in a way that makes you want to keep listening because the game clearly has something to say. But before we go deeper into the story, I want to give a clear heads up. This game deals with very heavy emotional themes, including severe depression, self-destructive thoughts, and different forms of harm. It is dark, it is mature. I'm going to try and handle it in a very careful way. I also want to stay within YouTube's guidelines because they've been on me recently, and I don't think it's worth nuking the channel for one video, but I don't want to erase the weight of the conversation either, because avoiding these topics doesn't help anybody. So I'll move through it responsibly and try to stay on the right side of the line. And with that being said, I want to walk you through this story. And throughout it, I also want to talk about a few real-world individuals whose behaviors mirror the patterns of these in-game antagonists. If you enjoy the video, let me know. Hit the like button so it reaches other people who might want to share their thoughts. And since you're still here, welcome to
The Cat Lady.
My name is Susan Ashworth. I live alone in this old 2-bedroom flat. I rarely go outside. Some would say it's a lonely life, and I guess that's true, but I don't like people's company. Not lately, anyway. I only trust my cats these days, and I will miss them dearly, but they will understand, like they always have. Teacup stays with me till the end. He watches me, as if he knew. Because earlier tonight, I swallowed a whole bunch of pills. They're legal, of course, prescribed by my doctor for my sleeping problems. But I've taken 34 of them, all I could find in the cupboard, and now the room around me spins in a blurry tango as my heart slows down. Any second now, I will be dead. I feel calm. I'm ready for it. I've only got one thing to say now. Thanks for nothing. Goodbye.
So Susan reaches this point where she feels overwhelmed enough to end her own life. And instead of passing away, somehow, someway, she wakes up somewhere completely unfamiliar. As she moves through this place, the scenery shifts from open wheat fields to tight and echoing highway tunnels and a quiet house with a strange machine demanding a blood offering. While exploring, she starts to find different versions of herself, all lifeless, and every single one of them looks exactly like her, but they're corpses. And eventually she comes across an older woman sitting outside of her home.
Welcome to my house, Susan Ashworth. I have been waiting for you, my dear. I knew you would turn up one fine day like this.
Who are you?
I have so many names, it's hard to pick one. But I'm curious, who do you think I am?
Susan takes in the context of what she experienced wandering the void, and her saying that she knew Susan would come eventually. So naturally, she would conclude that the apparent woman before her with all her air of ominousness and demonic underlay in her voice, was Death, to which she vaguely supposed might be her name, as she speaks in riddles that she comes when there's something to take, but she never gives anything back. She is the end, however she is also freedom. Feared by most, craved by some just like Susan, who wanted the liberation that death provides. But it's this next part that gets me wondering if she is actually Death or something connected to it. Because Susan says, "Don't flatter yourself, I don't even know you." And to this, the old lady responds that isn't exactly true because she's been around her for a very long time, keeping her company, day and night. To me, death isn't something that stays. Death is something that is brief. So she either has to be a representation for depression or death drive, a Freudian concept in psychology that I've talked about a few times in other videos, where it basically drives one towards death, exactly what it sounds like. And this actually makes sense because Susan had a desire for death. But moving forward, she says she wants to make a deal with Susan, which already tells us that she has an ulterior motive, solidifying that she isn't somebody to trust. Taking the conversation inside, she tells Susan that she is known as the Queen of Maggots. And this is also kind of fitting, as maggots in real life symbolize death, decay, but also transformation. This elderly lady continues with her quote-unquote offer to Susan. She's going to take away her sadness and give her back happiness, but in exchange, she has to go back to life and quote-unquote take care of 5 particular people. But these aren't normal people. The Queen says that they are just like Susan, however they are so in a different way. Both have suffered, both have been shaped by trauma, but where Susan turns her pain inwards and destroys herself, the Parasites, as the Queen calls them, turns their pains outwards. The Parasites, they are serial killers who take their inner darkness and destructively push it outward, and other people suffer because of it. However, their actions also create this imbalance that the Queen wants to correct because she values order. When Susan asks why she was chosen, the Queen tells her that she sees something familiar within her, which suggests that the Queen might have had a past before becoming what she is now. The Maggot Queen says that she has the power of gods, but she doesn't say whether she always had that power. And she can't operate in the real world, which is why she needs Susan to act on her behalf to remove the parasites, since her influence does not reach into real life. Or I don't know if we would call it real life, I'd say like the realm of the living. But this also confirms another speculation that I had. Susan enters the Queen's realm after her suicide. So I think this specific limbo can only be accessed through that specific means. But of course, as one would expect, Susan would tell her that she doesn't want to go back to the land of the living, commenting about how she was a failure in life and that she couldn't even die properly either. But the Queen insists. Her reward is going to be one where she can handle and overcome her depression and drive towards death. She will feel happiness once more, and if Susan doesn't do this, more innocent people are going to suffer. Susan says this is a job for the police. She can't stop murderers, but the Queen gives her another gift. Ironically, she grants her immortality. She says she really doesn't want to go, but the Queen says she already made her executive decision, so this wasn't really an offer, it was an order. One where if she doesn't follow, she will be stuck in the echoes of Limbo for all of eternity. Leading her into a room that Susan somehow recognizes, she says that it's the one place she didn't want to go back to, alluding to a particular tragedy that took place here. Note the window and the lamp on the left. The Queen says that this is her fate if she doesn't comply, threatening her and saying that she can keep going long after she can't. Nobody wants to be tied up and left to suffer like that, so she agrees. But, she says, in the words of the great philosopher Frank Sinatra, "I'll do it my way." The Queen gets pissed that Susan won't just let her guide her, but ultimately she can't control her. So, with that, Susan is transported back to the other room. She tries to leave, but the way is blocked by maggots, and she turns back to the other room, and she finds a bunch of candles. She blows out the first one, but when she does, she sees a man saying that he had no choice. He apologizes to somebody named Alice before taking his own life. Now, this opens up the way out of the house and back to the other house with the machine where she would try to reach into a hole in the wall, only to have her arm cut off, which is exactly the sacrifice that the machine needed in order to power on. And after it does, A disarmed Susan rushes out into the light. The following section deals with Susan cutting back and forth between therapy sessions with a psychologist and being in the hospital. The first thing she hears is the man thanking Susan for noticing his art.
Yes, I do enjoy fine art. Thank you for noticing. There's a certain raw beauty to it that modern painters often fail to recreate. I always wanted to be an artist myself, but it'll be a long time before I can call myself that. I often say that patients are my canvas.
You just know this guy's off his rocker or something. But what ends up happening is he evaluates Susan to see if she's fit to return home. More explicitly, does she still have thoughts of harming herself again? Susan explains that she used to be a nurse, so she knows how the game goes. And as the conversation continues, Susan tells him about what happened before she came into his office. She explains that she woke up in a hospital bed. It turns out that she clinically died for 1 minute, but came back to life. For a while, she lies there, saying nothing, contemplating everything. She doesn't speak to the doctor, nor does she speak to Liz, the nurse who talks to her about a variety of things, including a psychologist named Dr. X, and her own personal life. In regards to the latter, Liz feels alone because she hasn't been able to form a meaningful connection with anyone. After about 15 minutes of a one-sided conversation where Liz talked and Susan listened, we go back to the therapy session where she talks about her childhood. She divulges that she grew up without a father because he died in a car accident. Her mom was great. She did her best as a single parent to give Susan everything she could, but died 7 years ago. And then Dr. X says he wants to talk about something else, which is when we fade back to the past. Here we see Susan trying to escape the hospital. She feels fine, ready to go home, but she hasn't been discharged yet, so she ends up tricking another patient next door by taking her wristband with her name on it, as well as her discharge papers, trying to pose as her in order to leave. But she's not in the clear yet. In fact, right as she's about to make her escape, Dr. X stops her. He says that they can't legally release her because she hasn't done her psychiatric assessment yet, so she needs to stay tonight, and tomorrow they're going to talk and then she'll be free to go. And this brings us up to the present, where Susan is on her last string of questions with the doctor. She shares that she works as a waitress currently, and every morning she starts her day off with coffee and a cigarette, which sounds healthy. But before I met my wife, to be real with you, I used to as well. Sometimes it would be whiskey and cigarettes. Mind you, I wasn't sad or anything, I just had no reason not to. I mean, looking back, that just wasn't healthy. But also, I didn't work because I took 2 years off after I was in the military to spend time discovering myself, so I figured why not? It felt good in the moment. But yeah, I love my wife. And that's enough sharing my personal life with the 12 of you who are still listening. Susan continues on about how she's a homebody, and how when she goes out, she sees happy and successful people, and that just makes her mad. She explains how she wishes that she had a reason to continue, a purpose. Doc X asks if she's taken therapy before. Suze just says that it never helps. She still suffers the same way. She continues to have difficulty sleeping. Throughout the day, she struggles to focus on anything due to her depression.
Sometimes when life gets too much and people feel sad or upset, they think about suicide. Do you often think about suicide?
Yes, I think about it often. But now, I know I can't do it. Still, it won't just go away that easily. I need more time. I need to think it through. I need to find my peace with the world, I guess.
Please, in your own words, try to explain to me, why did you really try to take your own life, Susan?
Nothing was making me happy anymore. There wasn't a single thing that would bring a smile to my face. I kept thinking, won't it be better if I just disappear? I tried. I really tried to find something. Took a long bath, picked up a book, watched some television, but I just couldn't get into anything. All those things seemed like worthless distractions, and I myself felt obsolete, needless. It just would get worse and worse. By the afternoon, I realized I cried for the past 3 hours. I didn't even know I'd been crying until I went to the bathroom and saw my face in the mirror. I looked like a ghost. I looked like I was dead already, you know? And then I saw the sleeping pills. I thought, Why not? And I did it.
Do you feel as if you're a burden, or that life isn't worth living?
Sometimes, when I feel really low, I used to think everyone would be happier without me. But I guess people don't really care. Besides, I live alone. Who could I be a burden to?
What makes you feel better?
My cats. I always put out a bowl of food for the stray cats. They're ever so grateful. I like their company.
What makes you feel worse?
People. They've let me down too many times. I don't know who to trust anymore. I only trust my cats these days.
So you say in the suicide note.
Because that's true. I've been stabbed in the back more times than I could count.
Have you imagined your funeral and how people will react to your death?
Oh, I never really thought about that. But I guess it would be a cheap one. I don't really know what they do with people like me. Maybe they just throw us in a hole and forget about it, since there'd be nobody to visit my grave anyway.
I don't think so, Susan. The city would pay for it.
Or so they want people to believe.
Now, when he asks her about her ex-husband, Susan immediately shuts it down and adamantly refuses to go further on the subject. And when he asks if she's going to do it again, she vibrantly says no. She knows what death looks like, so now she's choosing life. However, this is when things take a dark turn, because Dr. X asks her what happened last night. After they stopped her from leaving and sent her back to her room in the middle of the night, Liz woke her up and urgently said that they need to get the hell out of there. Susan was not safe. But following her, Liz would bring her up to the roof of the hospital, which confused Susan, of course. And that is when Liz reveals that she has SI. She stands on the roof, inviting Susan to join her, but she doesn't join her. So Liz lamented to Susan, saying how nobody ever listens to her, suggesting that Susan didn't even listen when she told her a bunch of stuff, her personal life stuff. Even though Susan proved that she was listening, Liz would still step off. All we hear is the sound of a car alarm going off. But then something weird happens, right? She tries to tell people what happened, but nobody believed her because nobody saw the body. The car must have moved. Dr. X asks if she was sure that she saw this happen, saying that he saw her just this morning. But then...
I'd like you to come with me and see her. Say hi. Make sure she's alright.
Stop treating me like I'm crazy. Fine, I'll go. I don't even care that much anyway. The door is locked?
I plan ahead, Susan. I had a feeling in my gut, and my gut's never wrong. I feel like I really got to know you, though. I'm very sorry you've had such a difficult life. I like your green eyes and your sleek cheekbones. You're a clever girl, Susan, but the sadness has poisoned you for too long. There is no coming back from it. For what it's worth, I would have let you go if it wasn't for Liz.
She wakes up in the other world again, and I pops on screen saying that he is the Crow. He points her to the way out, but there are two doors. Only one way is the actual way out. And the only way for her to find out which door is the right door is to figure out a riddle. Two guards. One always lies, the other always tells the truth. It's quite elementary and something I learned back in 3rd grade. Susan asks one of the guards, what door would the other one tell me to go through? And she chooses the opposite. This leads into a room with flowers. She hates flowers, but she does end up back in the Queen of the Maggots' house. She blows out another candle and she sees somebody on their deathbed back in the hospital. They're drawing their last breath, right as Susan breathes her next one. The doctor had put her in a body bag.
You treacherous, dirty bastard. I opened my heart to you, and you stabbed me to death in cold blood. You'll pay for this. I swear you will. I think it's time to find out how very mortal you are, Doctor.
So now we know that this is the first parasite, the hospital psychiatrist, Dr. Xavier. He is a dangerous individual who targets his own patients. When somebody in a position of care turns harmful, it leaves a deeper impact on the victims, well, just everybody who knows about it, because these are the people in society that are expected to be trustworthy with our health and our families. And so a real case that aligns closely with Dr. X is somebody known as Harold Shipman, a former physician widely regarded as one of Britain's most prolific offenders in modern history. While he was formally charged with 15 deaths, an official inquiry concluded that the real number was likely in the hundreds, with many estimates resting near 215. All of Shipman's victims were his own patients, most of them older women. He sought out people who trusted him, which made his approach so effective. He used a strong pain medication that was normally reserved for patients with severe illnesses. But the thing is, many of his patients came to him with simple health concerns, things like cold or manageable blood pressure issues, and sometimes he would visit their homes. Now, after administering the drug, he altered medical records and paperwork to make everything appear routine. Shipman never explained a motive, so the reasons behind his actions are based on interpretation. But when he was 17, he cared for his mother during her final stages of cancer and watched her doctor use morphine during her treatment. He said that this experience influenced his choice to enter medicine. Some experts believe that this memory may have affected how he later viewed medical authority, while others have theorized that he might have struggled with feelings connected to grief or control. Another theory is the God complex, a psychological term that describes individuals who believe that they have the right to make life and death decisions. This idea appears in some cases involving medical professionals who take advantage of the authority that their jobs provide. There is also a related category called angels of mercy, where offenders claim to end suffering, but Shipman did not align with that label. The similarities between Dr. X and Shipman become clearer when you look at their methods. You see, both focus on patients who trust them, both use their professional roles to create a false sense of safety, and in the game, Dr. X speaks calmly. He talks about art and he acts polite. But if you're like me, you probably sensed that something was off with Dr. X. In real life, Shipman fooled not only families but other doctors, nurses, and paramedics. And this is because he provided explanations that sounded plausible. Even when traces of the drug were found, he was convincing enough to avoid consequences. But you see, even for individuals as smart as Shipman, they make mistakes. Months before his arrest, local undertakers, or morticians, and a nearby medical practice noticed how many of his patients were dying. Police investigated nearly 20 cases and asked the local health authority to compare medical files with official records. But still, they couldn't catch him because everything looked consistent. Shipman had already changed the documents. So he would continue until his final victim, Kathleen Grundy, a former mayoress. In her case, he attempted to benefit financially by faking her will and naming himself as the recipient. But that is where he ducked up. Her daughter suspected something was wrong, and she contacted the police, and that was the investigation that finally uncovered the pattern and put Shipman in jail. However, there is another real-world figure who matches some parts of Dr. X's behavior, H.H. Holmes. Often considered America's first documented serial killer, Holmes practiced medicine during the late 1800s, and he used that authority to gain trust. He built a large, maze-like residence that investigators later nicknamed the Murder Castle. The Dark Pictures anthology, they have a game called The Devil in Me, and it's based on him. I'm pretty sure my wife watched a show called Murder Castle at some point, but I'm probably remembering that incorrectly. Either way, Holmes designed his building with hidden rooms, soundproof areas, secret hallways, and a basement where he concealed his victims. His motivations include control, financial benefit, and personal gratification. He created a space where he could act without interruption. Dr. X is the same way. He uses the hospital as a controlled environment where he chooses who is vulnerable and he controls everything. And so some of you guys might be saying, well, Holmes didn't create artistic displays. I agree mostly with that, but he did design an entire building around his goals, and that's kind of artistic in a way. Now, Dr. X puts that energy into recreating famous artworks using people that he's harmed. It's his version of expressing control. He is also just a sick bastard, and he gets off on it. Returning to the story, Susan eventually finds several of those art pieces. She also finds Liz's body, suggesting that Dr. X brought her down here after the rooftop incident. Down the hallway, Susan hears a woman crying out. Getting a weapon and finding them, she would do as the Queen of the Maggots commanded. But she had to decide which cool one-liner to say. Finally, she decides on,
What's up, Doc?
Untying the girl, she profusely thanks Susan, asking who she is, and Susan just says, the cat lady. Deciding to go home, aiming to feel some sort of normalcy, she takes a shower, eats a burger, has a coffee, smokes a cigarette, and then plays the piano, which summons her cats.
Come inside, my darlings. I've missed you. And who's that? Teacup. I bet you thought you'd never see me again. Well, make yourselves at home. Dinner is ready to be served. Come on, everybody. Gather around. It's time for dinner. You never eat my food, Teacup. Already had your dinner, have you? No, I get it. I know. You're a good friend. The best friend I have, really. The only friend in the whole fucking world. You come over to keep me company and want nothing in return. I appreciate it. You should know. If you could know what I've been through lately. I've been to hell and back, my boy. But I'm here now. In my flat. Alive. And it's still the same mess that it's always been. I'm not sure how to deal with all this anymore. Don't know if I can. I wish I could be like you. At peace with the world. Always smiling. Someone's at the door. But who could it be so late at night?
Opening the door, it's her upstairs neighbor, who is mad at her for playing the piano for a minute. He screams, scolds her, threatens that he's going to call pest control on all of her cats. And normally, before, Susan would have just apologized. But not anymore. She is a changed woman.
Point that finger at me again, and I will break it. I'm done talking to you. Go fuck yourself.
Now, while she was happy that she stood up for herself, that was also the tipping point for her that night. Everything collapsed, and she just broke down. But as she cried herself to sleep, we would see a pest control van driving around. It stopped at a rundown house, and when the pest control man got out, he goes to the trunk to get something, and that is when we see he was dragging somebody by their legs. Waking up back in her apartment, Susan would hear somebody at her door. When she opens it up, she sees a woman standing there. Now, something that I forgot to mention earlier was how Susan got to the hospital. It's explained that a woman had called for help after finding Susan unresponsive in her apartment, which is why Susan ended up in that hospital instead of being discovered much later. The woman told the hospital that she was Susan's daughter, even though Susan insisted she didn't have one. And now her supposed daughter has returned. I'm not sure if the phrase prodigal daughter technically fits here, but it sounded good in my head when I wrote it, so I'm going to keep it. The prodigal daughter returned. She says her name is Mitsy. I looked up that name out of curiosity. In German, Mitsy can mean bitter, and in Japanese, it can be read as my life. Mitsy explains that she's here because she saw that Susan had posted a roommate ad months ago. But because nobody replied, Susan forgot about it. Mitsy hints that she has an extra reason for wanting to stay here, but she doesn't reveal it right away. Susan isn't fully comfortable with somebody moving in, but something about Mitsy feels warm and safe, mentioning that Mitsy feels familiar in a way that she can't describe. But Susan also wonders how Mitsy even got into her flat. Susan says that she let herself in, aka picked the door lock, and she had done so because she heard the cats yowling on the other side of the door, so she thought something was wrong. Now, once inside, Susan shows her the room. Mitsy finally shares part of the real reason that she's here. She's actually looking for somebody, and her search has led her to this apartment building. Now, Mitsy knows that the person she's after lives somewhere within this complex, but she doesn't know which unit yet. When Susan asks why she needs to find him, she says that he did something serious, and she just wants to talk to him.
Why do you have a shotgun?
I just want to talk to him.
What are you doing? It is not his fault.
I just want to shoot him.
I need to talk to him to get closure, you know?
Just talk. Are you sure?
Yep. I want to meet face to face with him. That's all.
Despite 52 reasons not to, the two agree and Mitsy moves in. But then Susan's eyes widen as she stumbles back, because she sees the Queen of Maggots standing right behind Mitsy. Susan yells at her to leave, saying that she's not safe there with her, but Mitsy still desperately insists on staying. And that's when Susan says,
You're going to die.
I know. Yeah. I know. How did you know, Miss Ashworth? Are you some sort of a psychic? Do you possess some kind of supernatural mind-reading abilities? Or is it just so fucking obvious?
What do you mean? I don't know how you're going to die, but call it a hunch if you like.
It's cool. A hunch. Well, I do. I know exactly. It's already started, as a matter of fact. Do you want to see? I'll show you. Here, Miss Ashworth. Take a good look, because I'm not going to do it again.
It's time to wake up, my little pussycat. What's the matter, sleepyhead? Had a bad dream? Do you want me to give you a cuddle and a kiss? Take the nightmares away? What's the matter? Cat got your tongue? Well, don't you worry, my sweetest. I know a thing or two about pussycats. I can help. What do you say? Shall I take a good look at this of yours?
You're a dead man. You just don't know it yet. I'll cut your throat open and watch you bleed to death. I'll feed your body to the crows. Oh, you're gonna regret this, pal.
What's going on in there? Who's this? Did you play with this little bitch behind my back? 'Cause if you did, I swear to God...
Me? I'd never do that. You know me, honey. You're the only girl for me. This lady here will join us for dinner. That's all.
For what? Take the goddamn mask off when you talk to me. You know damn well I can't stand it. And make sure you put it back in the van so you don't fucking lose it again.
Okay. I was just saying, she's here for dinner.
Good. Dinner. I'm starving. And I'm sick to death of them bloody cats. You nasty little whore. Trying to seduce my husband in my own home. How bloody rude.
Who the fuck are you?
Shut up, you stupid bitch! I know what you're up to. You kept staring at him with these big green eyes. You want him, don't you? You think you can take him from me? Well, I've got just the thing. I always keep this bottle handy. It's bleach, the strongest you can get. You give me no choice. I can't risk losing him. I have to make sure he won't be attracted to you anymore. You won't need these eyes and this face much longer anyway. No one will do it right if you don't do it yourself.
Parasites 2 and 3 are the pest control man and his wife, Gladys. Their partnership is unsettling. They kidnap people, keep them inside of their homes, and subject them to cruelty before taking their lives. Their dynamic involves jealousy, control, and a shared interest in harming others, with hints of inappropriate behavior from the husband that Gladys reacts to with anger. Now, serial killer couples are uncommon, and it is even rarer to see two partners who are equally committed to the same destructive behavior. A real case that often appears in discussions about violent partnerships is the story of Ian Brady and Myra Hindley, known as the Moors murderers. They were a serial killer couple in the UK during the 1960s, and while they are not a perfect match for the pest control man and Gladys, mainly because their crimes didn't take place inside of their homes and their victims were minors instead of adults, their psychological dynamic is still worth examining and drawing parallels between, because they show how two people can reinforce each other's behaviors in toxic ways that make them more dangerous when together. Between the years of 1963 and 1965, Ian and Myra killed 5 victims. The ages of their victims are one reason that this case became so notorious. Brady was born in 1938, and he had a difficult childhood. He grew up in a poor area with a single mother who struggled financially. When he was only 4 months old, she placed him with foster parents, and he grew up without understanding who his birth mother was. Neighbors described him as a loner with a short temper, and reports from his adoptive family suggest that he struggled emotionally throughout his youth. By his teenage years, Brady had developed an interest in extremist ideologies, violent fantasies, and harming animals. But this was also when he started to commit petty crimes, such as theft and burglary. After several run-ins with the law, he was ordered to live with his biological mother and stepfather in Manchester, but his behavior still did not improve. He continued to offend, spent some time in prison, and worked various jobs. But it was at one of those jobs, when he was 22, that he would meet Myra Hindley. Hindley's early life was comparatively stable. She was intelligent, had supportive grandparents, and didn't grow up with the same level of turmoil as Brady. But once they met, she instantly, intensely became attached to him. And Brady very quickly realized the influence and control that he had over her. They spent most of their time together, distancing themselves from co-workers and friends. They bonded over dark interests, and Hindley would even change her appearance to match Brady's preferences, including dyeing her hair blonde. They began dating in 1961, and within 2 years, they committed their first killing. And their methods followed a pattern. Brady selected a victim. Hindley approached them. She believed that as a woman, she could gain trust of minors more easily and convince them to go with her to a location that Brady had chosen. Their first victim, we'll call her P, was somebody that Hindley knew. Brady signaled to Hindley to stop P when they saw her walking, and Hindley persuaded her to accompany them to the moors. P was killed there, though the exact details remain unclear due to conflicting accounts. Later, they would have more victims that they brought to the moors, and the police would find evidence, including an audio recording where Hindley's voice was heard giving instructions. That recording played a major role in their convictions. Their killings came to an end when Hindley's brother-in-law, David Smith, contacted the police after witnessing part of the killing of one of the victims. Brady had talked with David about various crime fantasies, including bank robbery, but when David was brought to the house to help dispose of a body, he immediately called the authorities. Police showed up, found the body, arrested Brady. As the investigation continued, evidence showed that Hindley was involved as well. In the 1970s and 80s, the couple would admit to even more crimes that they had previously denied. Hindley often claimed that Brady manipulated her, describing how strongly influenced she felt by him, but she never fully accepted responsibility. Later evidence would present that she actively participated in every killing, and experts widely agree that while she was not simply following Brady, she still chose to be involved. The dynamic between them show how two individuals can strengthen each other's worst impulses. And I'm sure to some degree we've all seen this happen. Maybe you have parents or you have friends that they're kind of like okay by themselves, but when they're with their partner, they become toxic, and that toxicity just amplifies to like the worst degree ever. Maybe it's just me. But while Pest Control Man and Gladys differ from Brady and Hindley in the details, their shared mindset is similar. I would say it's a little bit different here because Gladys is the one controlling the Pest Control Man, telling him what to do, if you know what I mean. However, we have another real-world couple who resembled the dynamic between them, Rose and Fred West. They were a long-term pair involved in a series of serious criminal acts. And while many experts studying their history describe a partnership where harmful behavior was encouraged from both sides, Rose was often reported as the more forceful personality, and Fred followed her direction. Both Fred and Rose grew up in homes marked by instability. Fred's childhood included strict parenting and emotional volatility. Now, I have to be careful with my wording here because YouTube, but while Fred was a teenager, he faced a serious accusation from a family member, although the case did not move forward. He would later claim that there was broader dysfunction in the home, although at least one sibling disagreed with his version of events. Fred also had 2 major head injuries when he was young. The first happened during a motorcycle accident, leaving him unconscious for several days. The second occurred a few years later after a fall during an argument. Some researchers have questioned whether these injuries contributed to the changes in his impulse control and behavior later in life. But by the time that Fred met Rose, he had already been connected to the disappearance of a woman named Anne McFall, who had been close to his family. But investigators later identified her remains in a rural area, and he was believed to be responsible. Fred met Rose in 1968. She was in her mid-teens, and he was in his late 20s. Rose also grew up surrounded by instability. Her mother had medical challenges while pregnant, and Rose struggled in school and socially. Her father also dealt with behavioral issues of his own, which created a tense and unpredictable household. These early experiences shaped Rose's outlook and reactions to others. Rose's parents disapproved of her relationship with Fred and contacted social services, which led Rose to being placed in temporary care. When she turned 16, she left and moved in with him. So their home eventually included Fred's 2 daughters from a previous relationship, and later, children that he also had with Rose. That's insane. While Fred briefly served time for theft, the household environment became increasingly erratic. Reports indicate that the children faced emotional distress, and Rose's behavior towards them became more severe over time. And in one particularly tragic event, Fred's daughter, Charmaine, died while he was in custody, and Rose was believed to be responsible. After Fred returned home, he concealed what had happened. Not long after, Charmaine's mother, Rena, attempted to reconnect with her children, and she also disappeared. Her remains were later found in the same area as Anne McFall's. Over time, Rose and Fred created a home that was isolated from the outside world. Several young women who worked as nannies or stayed with the family would go missing. Other individuals who crossed paths with the couples also disappeared. Their daughter, Heather, eventually shared concerns with a friend about the environment at home, and when Fred and Rose learned that she was planning to leave, she also disappeared. Her absence was the one that raised questions among relatives and school staff, and comments from other children eventually led police to investigate the property in 1992. During the search, investigators found multiple sets of remains on the property and in surrounding areas. Fred admitted to involvement, though he claimed Rose was unaware of what happened, despite substantial testimony indicating that she played an active role. Their daughter, Anne-Marie, described years of mistreatment and confirmed that Rose was fully aware of the household's environment. Now in court, prosecutors argued that Rose occasionally initiated or encouraged harmful actions, pointing to several specific cases. She, of course, denied this and said that Fred was the one who controlled her, but the court concluded that she was a willing participant. And so as a result, she was sentenced to life in prison, and Fred passed away while awaiting trial. The history of Rose and Fred West is often used in discussions about destructive partnerships, relationships where harmful tendencies escalate because neither person counterbalances the other. This mirrors the dynamic between the pest control man and Gladys in The Cat Lady. In both cases, there is a pattern of control, jealousy, and shared hostility that amplify one another. In the game, Gladys grows angry when her husband pays attention to Susan. In West's history, similar tensions also appeared when Fred's attention drifted or when other women entered their lives.
Hey there, gorgeous. I see my old lady brought the bleach again. What a shame. I really liked your eyes. It could have been a start of something very exciting for us, if you know what I mean. She does that every single time. What do they call it? Trust issues. That's it. Well, never mind. Plenty more fish in the sea. I'm not too fussy, but even I have some standards. Ain't gonna touch a bird like you, I gotta be honest, girl. You look like shit. But I wouldn't want you to think I'm not a kind man. Plenty of time until dinner, and you're in pain, so I've brought something to end your suffering. Think of it as an option. I've got this gun here. It's one of my favourites. There's just one bullet in the chamber. Large caliber. You'd be long dead before you'd feel any pain. Sounds good, doesn't it? I mean, it's just an idea, you know, no pressure. Ah, of course. You can't see it. That bleach turns your eyes to nothing but jelly. So I'll just leave it for you here. Feel free to use it. That bullet's meant for you anyway. I'd better go now. We won't want to get caught red-handed again, would we? You naughty minx. What was that? You can't reach it? Well, what did you expect? Life's a real fucker sometimes.
Luckily, one of the cats that was captured was able to free Susan, but since she was blind, she had to use the iron that the man left and she was born again. Although it's a process, so what ends up happening is we cut back to Mitsy and Susan in the flat. They share some wine, spend some time talking about Mitsy's ex-boyfriend, how Susan is going to help her find the guy that she's looking for, and they also talk about her cancer. She has about 6 months left, and trying to find this dude is the very last thing that she needs to do before she goes. The conversation goes on to talk about Jack, her ex. He and Mitsy were best friends, hopelessly and perfectly in love with one another. Mitsy never formed connections with anybody else because Jack was the only thing that she ever needed. But when he learned about her cancer, it ruined him. Despite all the treatments, despite all the wishing that she could stay, it was set in stone. His girl would be gone, and Jack, like me, could not exist in a world without his girl. Consequently, he fell into deep depression, soon finding an online group where he'd come into contact with somebody named the Eye of Adam. Adam was good at planting seeds for people to take their own lives, and he would even tell them how to do it. He ends up doing this to Jack, suggesting to him that he gets Mitsy on board so that they could both play Romeo and Juliet by means of toxic gas that they could concoct themselves. However, she wasn't down with the idea. Mitsy did not want to give up, even if the doctors told her that it was game, set, and match. So Jack would end up doing it alone, in his car, in a parking lot that was supposed to be special to both Mitsy and Jack. Mitsy would find him there, gassed up, with a warning sign on the car. Jack put that warning sign up there at the behest of Adam because Adam didn't want accidental deaths. The idea is to die willingly. But keeping the conversation going, Suze would ask Mitz what the two compounds were in order to make that toxic gas. At first, Mitsy was ambivalent about sharing because she was afraid Suze might try to commit suicide again. However, Susan says that she's outgrown that. And as Susan rises back in her captor's house, she starts wandering around trying to find those ingredients, although she can't remember what the second one was. Upon finding a bunch of creepy and unsettling things, hinting that this couple engaged in cannibalistic behavior, as well as eating whatever the pest control man brought home, though it never explicitly shows anything. And so, as she was looking around, we ended up seeing the events which led up to her being captured in the very first place. Because remember, they were at the flat. While Mitsy and Susan were having their talk, the cats started to scream loudly enough to cause Susan to go outside and check on them. However, that is when the pest control man shows up. He pulls up on her, creepily starts calling her sweetheart, then refers to Susan's upstairs neighbor. Turns out the a-hole went through with his threat. But then, that is when the man takes Susan. That's who we saw getting dragged out into the house earlier. So, back in the present, after finding the house phone calling the cops but they don't help, she calls Mitsy, who wonders where she went. Susan tells her what happened, and since she can't recall what the second ingredient was, Mitsy tells her. After gassing the man, ripping the shotty from his arms, Susan finds Gladys so that she can say hello to her little friend, except she wasn't in the shed. Back out, she was in the tub, tried to ambush her, but Susan, instead, pumped her full of lead. 2 more parasites taken down, and Susan goes back home. Mitsy welcomes her return with open arms, noticing the trauma on her face. After that, Susan decompresses with a bath. She spends some time eating and drinking with Mitsy. She even shows Susan how to use Facebook, even though she doesn't have any friends, and this goes on for days. All of this connecting. She realizes that she has a friend in Mitsy. One rainy night, Susan shows Mitsy how they can go about finding Adam. She made a map of the apartment complex, and all they have to do is go to each door. If he's not in that apartment, they can cross it off the map. But after they're done going over their plan, Mitsy inquires with Susan about a pram that she found in the room that she's renting. A pram is a baby stroller for those who don't know. Now, when she mentions this, Susan falls silent, but Mitsy continues to push, asking if she has any children, which only unnerves her. She turns hostile, saying that she doesn't, how it should be obvious since she doesn't have any kids lying around. And Mitsy implores with her, saying that she can talk to her, how she just wants them to be friends.
Friends should trust each other, you know. I told you about Jack and everything else. Why can't you just do the same?
You told me about Jack because you wanted to. I didn't force you, did I? My private stuff is nobody else's business. Why does everyone want to remind me of this all of a sudden? Isn't 10 terrible years of suffering enough to let go and never bring it up again? Even for me?
For some reason, Mitsy reached over the table and knocked Susan's mug off. She said it was an accident, but how was that an accident? Anyway, Susan doesn't care anymore. But that is when someone starts knocking on the door. When she asks who it is, the door swings open and a bouquet of flowers gets shoved in her face. A masked man steps forward. Suze backs all the way up and all the way in. The flower man starts turning off the lights and approaches her, ending her, with Mitsy watching, too stunned to move. When she is resurrected, she's lying on top of Mitsy, duct tape in the bathtub. She's surprised because she was certain that the flower man had killed her. She can't comprehend how she is completely fine. But Susan says that they need to focus on getting out instead of wondering how she's alive. But they don't know what to do. In this moment of helplessness, Suze tells her that she actually used to like flowers. A decade ago, Susan had a simp who would send her flowers every week. A courier would come to deliver them while her husband Eric was at work. They also had a daughter, Zoe, who was only 6 months old at the time. And the room that Mitsy's staying in used to be her room. One night, her simp sent her this beautiful bouquet of flowers. Now, normally Suze would just throw the flowers that he sent away, but for some reason she was really digging these ones. Fully thrusted back into the memory, she answers a phone call. It's her simp. Susan has been trying to get him to stop for a while, but he's been relentless. Turns out they had a date, even locked lips. Now whether this happened before she was in a relationship or during, I don't know. But at this point, I wonder what her relationship with her husband is like, because if she isn't receiving love from him, she could be seeking it from somebody else, and this could mean that she was messing around with the simp while she was with Eric. This also could explain why she hasn't shut and cut this guy down already. She enjoys the feeling of being flattered and wanted, to be courted. Understandable. Not okay if you're in a relationship in my opinion, but I can understand it. Especially in the context of if she's not receiving love from her husband. This is why men and women, you guys gotta keep trying to win each other even after you've already got each other. Just because you're married or already settled into the relationship doesn't mean you stop doing the things that you used to do when you started dating. Because it's too common, too human for people to pine for things that they don't receive from somewhere else. But moving on, she tells him that this is over and to never call her again. Susan doesn't want Eric to find out about her admirer, so she hides the lilies in Zoe's room, coming up with a plan to say that one of their friends brought them for their daughter, also adding on that he probably wouldn't notice either way. And that is when her husband comes in, storming towards her.
You're back early. Is something wrong?
Yeah, well, let's think about it for a minute. Is something wrong? Yes, Susan, there is. Didn't you watch television? Listen to the radio? Didn't talk to anyone today?
What happened? Eric, just tell me what's wrong, okay?
It was those bloody terrorists again, here on our doorstep. Would you believe that?
So, it was a bomb?
Yes, in a restaurant. There's chaos spreading all through the city. Everyone's panicking. The police and army are everywhere. But you don't even care, do you, Susan?
Of course I care. I had no idea.
You should pay more attention to what's happening to this country, Susan. I could have died, and you wouldn't even know.
Did you get hurt?
No, not really. But the cab smashed quite badly. I was just there when it happened. There was smoke, clouds of dust so thick you couldn't see a fucking thing. So I stop, and all of a sudden some van hits me from the back. I hear my passenger screaming and shouting, and there's blood on the rear window. And just then another car drives right into us, and we're all stuck in that mess. Nobody knows what's going on, but imagining this might just be the end of the world. But no, it was some geezer with a bloody bomb. They closed all the main streets, in case there's more of them.
What time was that?
Around 7 p.m. I spent another 2 hours trying to get someone to tow the damn cab to the garage. Would you believe? Our insurance doesn't even cover this sort of thing.
You should have called me.
Of course, we can start to see Susan's predicament. And there's quite a bit I want to talk about here because I think it's important. So when Eric comes home, Susan greets him, but he ignores her, standing in front of her saying nothing. This silence functions as punitive silent treatment. It's designed to create discomfort and uncertainty. The thing is, Eric wants her to feel uncomfortable and on edge. Silent treatment is recognized as a form of emotional domestic abuse because it is used in order to control the other person's emotional state. When Susan asks, "Is something wrong?" Eric speaks to her in a condescending tone. He talks to her like a child who failed to meet basic expectations. And this type of behavior is something that fits the category of contempt in relationship psychology. Contempt involves speaking down to a partner and positioning them as inferior. It's also a common feature in emotionally abusive relationships. Eric then directs his frustration at his wife. A frightening event happened to him outside, and he uses her as the target for the emotions that he's carrying. This is called emotional displacement. Since he can't direct his fear or anger towards anybody else or towards the event itself, he transfers it onto somebody that he deems lesser, where there won't be any consequences for him, somebody who's going to absorb it without conflict. And this is also a known tactic in abusive dynamics because it places responsibility on the partner, even if they have no connection to the original problem. Eric also engages in blame shifting. He expects Susan to know what happened even though she had no access to that information, or she just didn't know about it. He frames her lack of knowledge as incompetence. This is something commonly seen amongst insecure individuals who rely on control to establish and stabilize their own self-esteem. It overlaps with traits seen in covert narcissism, which often presents as low empathy, chronic resentment, and a need to feel emotionally superior to their partner. Essentially, they know that in the outside world, they're nobody. And in order to feel like somebody, they have to make themselves feel better by making others feel smaller. And this leads us to Eric's communication style, which includes infantilization, which is basically treating a partner as if they're incapable of simple understanding or adult reasoning. Its purpose is to keep the partner, in this case Susan, in a lower emotional position, and it reinforces the abuser, Eric's, sense of authority. And the issue for anybody in this situation is that it creates a dynamic where the partner, on the receiving end, constantly has to try and predict the abuser's reactions. And so they end up walking on eggshells. I have seen this quite a bit with child-to-parent relationships, and I'm sure many of you can already relate to this. Parents will keep their kids walking on tiptoes, and the kids never know if their parents are going to be happy or angry. But the other thing that I want to highlight that Eric does is he withholds reassurance, explanation, and emotional clarity. This emotional withdrawal is deliberate, it's manipulative, and it functions as another form of control. Because by withholding normal supportive behavior, he ensures that Susan carries the burden of maintaining stability in the interaction. This is a hallmark of emotional domestic abuse, and it's often reported in relationships where one person holds power through emotional scarcity. The premise is, if I keep her emotionally starved, I hold more power. Or if I ensure that I don't give him too much attention, I'm the one who is going to have more power over him. You know what I mean? And so when all of these actions are combined, we can see that Eric fits the behavioral patterns of somebody associated with covert narcissistic traits. And also when I'm talking about covert narcissism, it's exactly how it sounds. Covert, meaning that it's subtle, it's kind of low-key, you don't really notice it right away, as opposed to somebody who's very out there with their narcissism. They are pretentious and grandiose with their narcissism. However, keeping it pushing, he barks at her saying that she doesn't care, how he called her 4 times, but that she didn't even hear it because she was too busy taking care of their daughter. He complains even more, and then orders her to pour him wine. He is straight talking crazy to his wife. I would never talk to my wife like that. Susan tells him to say please, but he just says he's not going to have any more of her nagging. And then she listens to him. She reinforces that behavior, doesn't give him any consequences, so of course we can expect that he's going to continue talking to her like that. Now, while she's getting the wine glasses, the phone rings, and immediately she's like, oh shit, it might be my simp, so she rushes to the phone.
Hello?
It's me again. I'm sorry, but I had to hear your voice again. I love you, Susan. Susan? You still there? Please, say something. Anything.
Thanks, but we're already insured with someone else.
Excuse me? Susan, it's me. The only thing I'm trying to sell to you is my heart.
We won't be needing pet insurance either.
What are you talking about?
Would you like my husband to talk to you? He's just come home from work. He usually deals with insurance companies.
Will you just put the phone down? Once you start talking to them, these insurance bloodsuckers will never leave you alone.
Susan, I'm so sorry. Should I hang up?
Just hang up, Susan.
All right. Take care then.
Continuing to the other room, they fight some more, with Eric complaining that she don't cook, she don't clean, and she's still got that ring, saying that she uses the baby as an excuse. But Eric says other wives can make this happen, so why can't she? Other husbands get served by their wives, they have kids, so what's your excuse?
I'm done talking to you.
Of course you are. That's what you always do, isn't it? You run out of arguments, you stop talking to me, then you lock yourself in the bathroom and fucking cry. I'm sick of repeating the same old thing over and over again.
Then why won't you give me a break, for God's sake? You're acting like I've done something terrible. I don't even know what your problem is. Is there something you're not telling me, Eric?
You'd know if you listened to me. But you never listen to me, do you? Not to a single word I've ever said.
Right. Here we go. It's not you. It's the alcohol speaking. I shouldn't be taking any of this seriously. I know that tomorrow you'll be apologizing to me for it.
It was just a couple of glasses and you had some too! I'm not drunk! I wish I was. Maybe then I could laugh at this shitty life and not care so much.
That's a good one. You really care so much, Eric. You should get a medal or something.
I thought you said you weren't gonna talk to me no more. You are full of shit, Susan! Full of shit!
Why don't you look at yourself, you idiot?
So I'm an idiot now, am I?
You keep picking on me for nothing.
No, this was coming, and you know it, Susan.
If you're so unhappy with me, then what the fuck are you still doing here? Pack your bags and leave me alone.
You're throwing me out. This is my fucking flat! I worked my fucking ass off for 7 years to buy it! I'm not going anywhere!
Don't be nasty. I'm doing all I can.
Are you really? Okay, doing all you can. You obviously care about your husband, coming home after a hard day's work. He's gonna be hungry. But wait, where's his dinner? Oh, let me guess. You didn't make it because you were too busy changing nappies, and singing, and playing, and washing.
Yeah, I think so. And I'm not going to feel guilty about it. If you'd spend more time with our daughter yourself, you'd know how important these things are. So pardon me, there's no dinner for a hard-working husband. From now on, he's gonna have to cook for himself. Because, you know what? The wife is working just as hard, and she's really tired of being treated this way.
So, personal opinion, I can start to see the issues from both sides of the party. I don't agree with a lot of the stuff that Eric is saying, nor with how he says it, but I can understand, at least where his head is at, where he's coming from. Naturally, I understand where Suze stands as well. But these guys need professional help. To be honest, they need Dr. Phil or something. They're not communicating effectively, they're not speaking with love, they're talking, going back and forth, yelling at one another at each other's throat. Yeah, I'm not going to get into it, but lack of proper communication first and foremost, and a willingness to actually sit down for a productive conversation is huge here. However, something else that came to mind about Eric, since he is the aggressor, is a psychological tactic that he employs throughout their conversations. It's called DARVO, D-A-R-V-O, an acronym for deny, attack, reverse victim, and offender. It's a manipulation strategy first identified by psychologist Jennifer Freyd, and Eric fits it perfectly. So what that looks like is Eric denies any responsibility or will try to minimize his wrongdoings. When his denial isn't producing the outcome that he wants, he goes on the offensive and he attacks her. He tries to make her seem irrational or like she's the one who's doing more harm to their relationship. But the last and biggest move is reverse who the victim and the offender are. Eric tries to paint himself as the real victim. You see the reverse here? Grasping at anything he can think of to make it seem like Susan was the actual offender. He tries to make it seem like he was the one hurt. She is the one ruining things. He is the one who deserves sympathy. She is the one overreacting, being crazy, misremembering, or not doing X, Y, and Z. Also, Eric uses money and gender roles, screaming, "I am the man," as tools for control, saying that this is my flat, I'm the one that earns money, and so this house is mine. When he calls himself the breadwinner and insists that she respects him because he's the one that puts food on the table, he is using financial dependence and rigid masculinity to place himself above her. It fits patterns seen in coercive control, where the partner limits the other person's autonomy by tying worth, safety, or stability to obedience. This is why it's pretty common for women to just put up with their husbands, because they're straight up afraid. They've got nowhere else to go since they rely on their man for money. But wrapping up this section, Eric has his entitlement and inflated self-importance. He treats basic respect as something that she has to earn by staying in her place, which is normal in an abusive relationship where they're built on I stumbled over my own words, where they're built on power rather than partnership. But yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to go into psychology at all, or even much for this video. But anyway, Susan wants to go check on Zoe. She says that she left her window open and she wants to make sure that she's okay. But Eric stops her. Eric doesn't let her go to check on their baby. He eggs her on, saying that she's just walking away as she always does because she knows that he's right and she's scared to face the truth. He tells her to not bother with checking on their barely 6-month-old daughter because she's fine. So Susan concedes and they continue their arguments, ripping their vocal cords at one another. However, while that was happening, a storm had started outside and it was blowing into Zoe's room. The wind was blowing on the flowers on the lilies that Susan placed in there. But the biggest issue was, Zoe had a very rare allergy to pollen, and that would be the death of her. Eric, probably feeling guilt and responsibility for what happened, drank himself to death. And Susan, well, you saw.
Thank you for telling me that. Now I understand. I understand why you're so sad all the time.
But that's when the flower man returns. He takes Mitsy out and comes back for Susan to release her. Susan is confused, wondering where Mitsy is. She goes out, spends some time trying to find a weapon, but she can't, so she continues to the living room. That's where she would find the carpenter and Mitsy. While she was hanging, the carpenter yells at Susan, except he's not saying anything. It's almost like he doesn't have a tongue.
What do you want me to do? I don't understand.
And he points at her to go play the piano, which she does. But he didn't know that whenever Susan plays the piano, this summons the cats. And so they start rushing in. The carpenter sees them coming, but it is too late for him to do anything. His eyes widen and he stands stunned, falling to the floor as he is eviscerated by all of these cats. But Susan remembers that she left Mitsy hanging, so she rushes to get her down. When she gets down, she sees what the cats are doing, and Mitsy is shocked that they're eating the flower man, but Suze tells her not to look. One more parasite eliminated. So the fourth parasite in the cat lady is actually never given a name, though the developers have referred to him as the carpenter, and most players just call him the flower man because he shows up with flowers when he attacks Susan. Out of every parasite in the game, he is the one we actually know the least about. He never speaks, he only grunts. The game gives us no backstory, no flashbacks, no explanation. All we can do is read his behavior and try to connect the dots. There is a community theory that he might be the same guy who used to bother Susan all those years ago, and that theory exists almost entirely because of the flowers. But beyond that detail, the game doesn't confirm anything. Everything else is interpretation. Now, when I was writing this script and going over the footage, I started to wonder if he had harmed himself with his own tongue at some point, since he doesn't speak at all and he only growls. I wondered about the piano thing as well, because he drags Susan to the piano as if he already knew that she could play. Now, the argument could be made that he told Mitsy to try playing the piano at first, but when he realized that she couldn't, that's when he went to go get Susan. Perhaps he assumed that if the flat had a piano, somebody inside had to have known how to use it. Again, not official, I'm just trying to make sense of his behavior. But what we can say for sure is that he doesn't pick Susan randomly. He goes straight to her apartment out of the entire building, or any other building for that matter. Unless he just picks people randomly, that implies that he's been watching and tracking her long before he even showed up at the door. But unlike other parasites who have clearer motives or consistent patterns, the carpenter is defined by the unknown. So unfortunately, without knowing more, I couldn't find anybody who was a good fit to reference here. I will note that if it is the secret admirer from Susan's past, that is a crazy amount of obsession, unhealthy attachment. Like, oh, Susan told me to shut up, so I'm gonna go, cut out my own tongue because she told me to shut up, so now I'm gonna shut up. You know what I mean? It's insane. But going around the complex seeking Adam, first they find one apartment that has been empty for a while, so they cross that off the list and go to the next neighbor, an old man who can't remember anything, and he repeats himself a few times, but ultimately they say that he can't possibly be Adam.
Let me get my hearing aid.
Do you think he'll be back with a shotgun?
Don't be silly. This isn't America.
Trying to sneak into another neighbor's flat, Mitsy poses as a nanny and tells the mother who answers that she can help with her baby. She invites them inside, and while they're there, after some shenanigans and manipulations, Mitsy looks through her computer to confirm that she's not Adam. After more snooping, the two end up in a seemingly abandoned apartment, and Susan says that she hasn't seen Joe, the man who lives here, in a long time. They find his laptop, but Mitsy leaves to go get her charger, saying that she'll be back in a minute. Susan decides to start looking around more. Entering his bathroom, which has 666 on the door, she finds a mannequin in the bathtub, and then, soon she would see a ghostly woman sitting on the floor. During this moment, Joe comes home as well. Freaking out, but with no place to go, she goes outside to confront him. He thinks Susan was sent by them, though he doesn't elaborate on who they are. He begins to slowly approach her, threatening her, talking about how he would call for help too, but that only the devil ever answered him. So she keeps backing up as he approaches, all the way through a hole in the floor. Waking up in an empty room, she finds 4 doors before her. Opening them in order, we create the sentence, "Devil came through here," and so she's able to continue. Strangely enough, they seem to be in another world, inside of a hotel that no longer exists. Or maybe she's still in the apartment that used to be a hotel, but just a different section. But Joe is there, not surprised by Susan's resurrection, which leads me to believe that he knows about the Queen of Maggots, or maybe he knows that there's supernatural forces at play in the world. But in the room over, Susan finds Joe's wife. Something's wrong with her though. She's become something inhuman. Speaking with her, she just screams the word misery and thrashes about in a blur. With no clue what to do, she heads back out to speak with Joe, and it turns out he didn't want to kill her, he just needs her help with something. He explains they're in a hotel called Quiet Haven, and that he and his wife Ivy have been stuck in this hotel for a week, though he would say a month later. Truth is, he's lost all perception of time. You see, Ivy went to go do her makeup one day, and she never got up from that spot. Whenever Joe tries to talk to her, Ivy gets angry, so he needs Susan to talk to her to try and convince her to get up so they can leave. Searching a nearby bookcase, Susan finds a book called Misery, which makes what Ivy had said, or what she was screaming, make sense. Inside the book, she finds a screwdriver which she then uses to adjust the mirrors using a nearby panel. When adjusting said mirrors to all face Ivy, she begins laughing, and we can see she's turned ghoulish. But when Joe comes in, he realizes that's not his wife. He says that's the monster that's been following him all this time, and he wants Susan to kill it. He threatens her, but doesn't know that she's immortal, I guess. Regardless, Susan refuses to follow anybody's orders, so she says no. Joe shoots her, and she immediately finds herself standing before Mitsy asking if she's okay. She really was gone for just a minute, but for Susan, time worked differently. Discovering that Joe isn't Adam, they cross his flat off the list, and they proceed with knocking out apartment 7, leaving only Susan's nasty neighbor, who called pest control on her and her cats. Knowing that her neighbor believes in supernatural occurrences, she dresses up as an entity known as the Cat Widow. She haunts him. She begins to tell Mitsy the tale of the Cat Widow, but really it's just Susan talking about how they're going to mess with their neighbor. The legend goes, her neighbor was angry at the world, took it out on cats, but one cat survived, the mother, and she turned into the Cat Widow, seeking revenge against the neighbor. She started out with small things to destabilize his mental, a cat shadow, a skull, and
a giant, blood-soaked zombie cat sat on his bed.
Now that's really stupid.
Fair enough. That didn't really happen. Everyone knows there's no such thing as giant zombie cats, right? What really happened was this. Cat Widow is here, was written all over the wall.
He finds the sentence, "The Cat Widow is here," written all over his walls. He wanted to call the cops, but his phone wasn't working, and there was a picture of a cat for his wallpaper. So he goes to the kitchen for a drink, but no water comes out, just what seemed to be blood. And that is when he sees a shadow walk by, and he goes to check it out.
He stopped, paralyzed. He'd heard something right in front of him. A whisper. More like a purr. She was there, in the dark corner of his living room, waiting. Black veil covering that pale, dead face, and yet he could almost feel Cat Widow's eyes piercing through him. cat widow aimed a shotgun at his chest and fired.
Really? Your sick imagination is running wild again, Mrs. A.
Right, so that never really happened either.
She came closer, like a ghost, and swiftly removed the veil. She came back for him, to take him to the river, to make him pay for what he'd done. As he looked into her eyes, he could feel the world spinning around him, his knees go weak, his pants suddenly wet around his crotch. As much as he hated life, he didn't want to die either. Inside, he was just a big, stinking coward. And then he fainted.
Did you see his face?
I knew he'd fall for this.
Yeah, we scared the living shit out of him. Now that's teamwork. Are you sure he won't know it was you, though?
Oh, he probably will, once he's had time to think about what happened.
But he's too proud to ever admit he's been beaten by a woman. I know him just about enough to know that.
Unfortunately, even after crossing everybody off their list, they still didn't find the Eye of Adam. So they decide to sleep on it. They go back to their apartments. But on their door was a note from Adam telling them to meet him in apartment 5 tomorrow morning. Apartment 5 was the same flat that the old man was in. They couldn't believe it, but they decided to go anyway after they've slept. However, down below, in the depths of the basements of the apartments, we find Joe and Ivy again.
It's just you and me, my love. No one will find us here. Stop worrying, Ivy. It will be all right. I will always love you. You know that. I'm gonna make you all better.
Now, what that was exactly, I still don't know. The following morning, Mitsy and Susan head to flat 5. Heading in, they see a fish tank with something that looks lethal attached to it. They also find a door locked from the inside. Adam is here. But that's when Mitsy and Susan hear somebody in the kitchen. It's the old man, and he's not playing dumb anymore. He says he's got nothing to do with everything, but rather it's his son. He says he's been trying to get him to stop, but he won't. The father says that he has done everything that he's could for his son since he was all he had after their mom died. Yet, he admits that his son has gone too far and he wants to help Mitsy and Susan stop him. Or at least survive what's about to come. Because when the two demand the key to his room, the old man says this is a trap. Adam is watching them right now through cameras, and he's going to kill them. Adam gave his dad a mask so that he could survive this trap, but not wanting to be part of the death of innocents and 100% certain that Adam won't kill his own father, he insists that Mitsy and Susan take the gas mask instead, and that is when the gas is released. Adam's father is astounded that his own son is going to kill him, and Mitsy insists Susan takes the mask, saying that she's already dead, that she's already going to die. But Susan is immortal, so she decides to save Mitsy. The two hug while the old man dies. Back in Otherworld, Susan meets with the Queen again. She says she's tired of her, demanding that she says whatever it is that she wants to say and be done with it. So she brings her in and tells her to blow out the last 2 candles. By now you've probably guessed that the candles are tied to other people's lives and souls, as every time Susan blew one out, someone would die. I even think it works like a soul exchange, or some sort of form of soul exchange where in order for the cat lady to keep on getting resurrected, she needs to blow out a candle. But now, the Queen wants her to blow out one last one, promising that after this, she's gonna leave her be. But there's a twist. Susan needs to blow out the correct candle, because if she doesn't, it is her life that is going to be extinguished forever. Susan says there is no way to know which one is right and that it is not fair, to which the Queen retorts,
Nothing is fair. You opened your heart talking to that doctor, and he butchered you like an animal. Then those disgusting cannibals, they'd chop you up and cook you for dinner if you'd let them. And what about the man with the flowers? All that he wanted was to hear you play before he split your skull open. The way your husband treated you, the way your neighbors laughed at you for years, just for being different. You did not deserve all that, and yet it happened. Am I forgetting something? Oh, yes, of course. Most of all, was it fair that...
Shut up! Just shut up, you ugly bitch! Now I know who you really are. All those feelings I had in me for years. That bitter guilt and self-pity. That hatred for myself and everyone else. You are that miserable illness that's consumed my heart all these years. You, always there, always. Every day I looked at you in the mirror, like a dark cloud I couldn't see through. I let you take control of my life. I believed it was right to feel like this. But not any longer. This ends here.
Then blow out the candle.
No, I won't. I'm done playing your stupid little games. You won't tell me what to do anymore. I am stronger than you. I can close my eyes and you'll be gone.
Blow out the candle.
It's time to say goodbye, sister. I'm not gonna miss you.
You will never leave this place without me. You need me. We are one.
No. Tomato. You were thinking about a tomato, right?
Mitsy would turn around to see Susan, asking how she's back again because she saw her die. Susan says that cats have 9 lives. Mitsy doesn't understand, but she's happy, telling her to not die again, and they turn to face the Eye of Adam.
You're the Eye of Adam? A pathetic, wheelchair-bound invalid? Is this a joke? Do you know who I am? Do you know what you've done to me? You fucking murderer! Tonight it's your turn to die. I'm gonna paint this room with your brains and I'm gonna watch and smile. I swear to God I'll do it. Well? Nothing to say? Nothing at all? Aren't you going to beg for your sad little life? Say something! Anything!
Mitsy, where did you get that gun from?
It doesn't matter. Please, Mrs. A. This is something I have to do. You are free to leave if you want. You don't have to be a part of it. Just try to understand. Beg for forgiveness, you scum. What the fuck is wrong with you? You don't believe I'm gonna shoot you, do you? Oh, I've dreamt of this moment for so long.
Look at this man, Mitsy. He hasn't twitched a muscle since we entered the room. I think he's paralyzed.
That's impossible. He's lying to us. He's faking it. Do something. Talk, for God's sake. I need you to answer me. I need to know.
He won't answer you. He can't talk.
Then how did he post all that stuff online?
So Adam was using his eye, which tracks with his computer, allowing him to type. Despite everything that she sees, Mitsy still insists that he needs to die for all of his horrible deeds in leading people to their deaths. A real-world comparison for the Eye of Adam is the case of William Melchert-Dinkel, a former nurse who targeted vulnerable people online. Instead of offering support, he used anonymous identities to influence individuals who were already struggling emotionally. He entered these online spaces where people discussed their mental health and presented himself as somebody who understood their feelings. And so many victims believed that they were speaking with somebody who genuinely cared about them, which made his guidance feel all the more trustworthy. Now, Will relied almost entirely on written communication. He stayed behind a screen and used long conversations to build familiarity. Just like Adam planting seeds in other people's minds, Will repeated harmful ideas disguised as sympathy and tried to push people towards decisions that they might have not made without external pressures. His influence came from persistence, emotional manipulation, and the distance created by the internet. And so you can see how closely this matches with Adam in The Cat Lady. The character never actually confronts anybody directly, he just communicates online, isolating people through messages, and he focuses on people who already feel hopeless in the moments when they're already at their lowest. Adam and William share a similar mindset that goes to show just how powerful online influences can be when somebody targets the emotionally vulnerable and uses trust as a tool. However, ringing it back, Mitzi's about to shoot Adam, but Susan tells her that this is what he wants. He's a troll. He's rage baiting her. Don't feed the troll. He likes the feeling of having control because in his real life he's got none. Top that, there are gas canisters all around. Adam ultimately wants them all to go boom together. And even though Mitsy wants redemption for Jack, Susan tells her that this isn't her and Jack would not want her to do this. Realizing that she's right, the two just walk away, leaving Adam to live and suffer in his existence. Cutting away to the future, Mitzi's passed, and watching her die in her final moments was brutal. Susan explains how being stuck in bed with nothing but your pain as the world goes on is a horrible situation. She talks about how Mitsy was her best friend and that she herself has grown from this experience, thanking Mitsy for granting her all of this to begin with. Mitsy was an amazing contrast to Susan. Where Susan had to live wanting to die, Mitsy had to die wanting to live. That hits in a way that I can't fully understand, but I liked seeing that angle. Suze says she's never going to forget Mitsy, but she also explains that now she's happy. She's in a better place. She has friends, likes going out. She's no longer alone. In fact, she started a blog, connecting and supporting others who have gone through what she's gone. It should be noted that her depression never left her.
But I woke up today, feeling better. Maybe I can never get rid of it. This invisible illness. Maybe it will always be living somewhere deep inside me. Asleep. Waiting. And when it'll hit me hard. But if there's one thing Mitsy taught me, it's that you have to pick yourself up and carry on. It doesn't matter that life isn't fair. It doesn't matter that you make mistakes. You fall and rise again. Worlds full of liars, traitors, cowards. But every now and then, you meet someone like Mitsy, who will just smile at it all. Now, I've forgiven the world and myself too. I teach myself to smile again. One day I'll get there. I know I will.
And from then on, nothing was the same. And this literally looks like the cover for Drake's album. So we spoke a great deal about the Parasites. However, I believe it is necessary to look at Susan herself. She is not a parasite herself, but she does end up killing a bunch of people. She killed all the parasites. Even though it was a good thing, technically she has a string of murders under her belt. Kinda like Dexter. When the game begins, She feels alone and overwhelmed, and her attempt to end her life shows how heavy everything had become for her. She receives immortality, but it functions as another weight that she has to carry, a curse. She has to stand up to people who cause harm and survive situations that keep pushing her farther than she might have been comfortable handling at first. And if we're drawing comparisons to real-world cases, one of the closest emotional parallels is somebody known as Aileen Wuornos. Aileen is one of the most well-known female offenders in American history, not because of the number of crimes, but because of the complex circumstances behind her decisions. When you look at her story, you see trauma, you see survival, you see the long-term effects of having to live without support. In between late 1989 and 1990, she killed 7 men in Florida while working along highways. The victims were men. In most cases, the encounters happened when she was accepting rides for work-related reasons, where she would later shoot them. Their corpses were found in rural or wooded areas, and in some instances, she would take their belongings or vehicles. During her arrest and trial, Wuornos said that the several killings were acts of self-defense, explaining that the men threatened or harmed her. Prosecutors argued that she planned these attacks and acted out of financial need. But the truth is still debated because the evidence never fully confirmed either explanation. Her own statements shifted many times throughout the process. At first, she said that she was reacting to danger. Then she would say she acted intentionally. Later, she would change her statements again. These changes reflected the stress that she had faced and the emotional strain that she carried. Aileen was convicted of 6 murders and then sentenced to death. She was executed back in 2002. But when you look at the life that she lived, you start to understand a little bit. She grew up in a neglectful environment. By the time she was a teen, she was homeless. She had no consistent support system. She unfortunately turned to prostitution just to survive. Throughout her life, she struggled with mental illness and emotional instability. And by her early 20s, she had already attempted suicide multiple times. Years of mistreatment, isolation, and fear shaped her view of the world, and it influenced the way that she saw men. This is where her story connects to Susan, because both women felt trapped by circumstances that they never chose. Both view certain people as threats. Both find themselves in positions where they have no power. In the game, Susan sees the Parasites as dangerous people capable of hurting her or others. Most of them were men, and eliminating them was the only way to survive. However, Mitsy fits into this discussion too. After Adam influences and assists in her boyfriend's death, she dedicates herself to finding him. Her grief turns into a desire for revenge, and she arrives determined to kill him. Susan is shocked when she learns this, but to Mitsy, this feels like the only path forward, the only way to survive. The difference is that Mitsy doesn't go through with it, and this is because Susan was there to stop her. She was the one who gives her a moment to pull back before crossing a line that she can't come back from. And so this is where we see the paths between Susan and Aileen deviating. Yes, both women come from trauma and loneliness. Both endured years of emotional damage. Both reacted to people they saw as threats. But Susan ends up receiving support, connection, and a second chance that allows her to heal. And then she pays it forward. When Mitsy was at her lowest, she was there to support her as well. She starts a blog and connects with other people who are in the same position that she's in, at their lowest.